Welcome to Geek Out Weekly, the podcast where we geek out not so strongly on a roughly 7-day basis. Uh, I need to mute my laptop, which is watching, because I've just started to hear me, and now I know how long the lag time is. I'm your host, Adil. Classy as ever, smooth transitions and intros, and I'm joined by Ben.
Hey.
How you doing, Ben?
Good, mate. Good, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we've both joined the Legion of the One Jabbers.
Mm-hmm.
And you're here to listen to us jabber away
Nice. Excellent.
about Love, Death, and Robots, Volume 2.
Which I feel now we've had the jab is everyone's life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, whether it was a chip or whatever was put into us, we're now part robot. So.
Yeah, we've got the 5G chip. Mm-hmm. We no longer have to fear death.
That was a good. Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, but we can no longer love again.
Oh.
Soz Kim and Evelyn.
Oh well. They'll survive.
Yeah. No, but seriously. I had not seen Volume 1 until more recently because we were going to talk about Volume 2, and it was just had missed my radar. And I'm so happy you brought this up as, hey, this is coming out, we should do it, because then I got to watch both series. I really enjoyed Volume 1, and I also enjoyed Volume 2.
Okay. Interesting.
How about you? So you haven't seen Volume 1 in a while, right? You didn't do any rewatch.
I didn't do a rewatch. No, I watched Volume 1 when it came out. It was something that kind of just appeared. I seem to remember maybe a week or maybe two before it actually released. It was sort of revealed and people started talking about it. And then when it came out, because it's quite a short run thing, I think Volume 1's about 18, 15, 18, 10 to 20 minute episodes. So a little bit longer, and people were kind of popping into the conversation saying, hey, I like this one and I like this one, and the conversation around that first season lasted a little bit of time, but obviously with it being Netflix and releasing it all at the same time, after a couple of weeks it kind of went out of everyone's conversation, and I just have never returned to it. With Volume 2 coming out, I haven't really seen much chat about it. It kind of I don't think it was even a week or two before it popped up. Suddenly it was, hey, this is out like tomorrow. I'm like, oh, cool. Oh, brilliant, great. I'll jump straight in, having enjoyed a lot of what sort of season or Volume 1, they call them volumes now, don't they? So what Volume 1 did, and just thought, yeah, great. I'm right up for this. Little disappointed that it's only eight episodes now, and that they're probably
they're much closer to 13, 15 minutes on average. Like, yes. I think there's one 18-minute one, a couple 18-minute ones, but mostly it's like 13, 14, and a couple sub 10 minutes.
And some of that will also include credits.
Yeah.
So the runtime of the story itself is sort of significantly, probably on average more like 10 minutes, I would think, something like that. Which, okay, it's fine. They're nice little sort of vignettes, nice little kind of, they're almost sort of novella length episodes.
So shorts,
with
right?
regards, they are shorts, yeah. It's kind of the novella to a novel kind of thing, to something a lot bigger. But how did you feel about you kind of mentioned or alluded to, at least, that you really enjoyed the first season, and then maybe not as much the second season? Is that, I mean, why?
So a couple things. One, we didn't actually say, so if you haven't seen this, it's an anthology sci-fi horror-ish series where the main themes are love, death, robots. Like we said, they're these 10 to 20 minute shorts depending on like Volume 1, Volume 2. And ostensibly we'll deal with one or more of those topics. I really liked the variety in Volume 1, and I realized that part of why I felt less good of Volume 2 was just because it was 8. So there was just like most of them throughout both volumes are like pretty like solid sci-fi stuff about AI, etc. Like what technology might do to your life, or what happens when a robot goes awry or something like that. But there's also these random other ones, and with the 18 episode count, there just felt like there were so many more random other ones. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
the and like the ones that the thing is on both series, the ones I really like are the ones that are doing this heavier sci-fi tropes. That's kind of I see why that's the case. But like even the second to last one in volume one was Alternate Histories, and it was this really cutesy animation style about all the ways people want to see what the world would have been like if Hitler died at various points in time.
Yes.
And it was 7 minutes, so closer to five probably before credits or without credits. And it was great, and it was a nice like palate cleanser
Hmm.
thing, especially if you were binging it. But it was also just kind of felt unique. It was still about technology, but it was a different spin. Um, yeah, and like yeah, you had enough space to have things like the weird Topher Grace freezer short where a whole civilization happens and you're like, well, this is bizarre and this is just kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
But with eight, it's there's much less of that. And like for example, the second to last one was the um Life Hutch with
Hmm.
Michael B. Jordan, and um except for the fact that it was at war, it really just reminded me of Automated Customer Service, the first one.
Yes. Yeah. Very
I'm in a
similar. Yeah.
place, a robot's supposed to help me, and it's not helping me, and
Hmm.
I have to figure out how to survive. And obviously, that's like painting with broad strokes, but because there was only eight, and also I watched them very close together, which you don't have to, but like it's binge culture, that's what Netflix
Yeah.
wants anyway. I just felt like, oh, another one of these. And that's kind of why I didn't like the collection as
Sure.
much.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think as well with it being eight, there is some difference kind of within the art styles, within the different animation styles. But with eight, several of them skirt that kind of uncanny valley as lifelike, and Life Hutch is one of those. At times, there are parts that look like it's being filmed.
Yeah,
It's
it's kind of crazy.
it is absolutely nuts. There was a close-up shot of Michael B. Jordan with just this sort of sweat running down his face, and you could just see like the pores in his skin. It looks absolutely nuts. And part of Life Hutch and the way that it adds to that is that it is the darkest episode of anything I've ever seen in any medium whatsoever. Makes sense for the setting that it's in, sure, but you get away a little bit more, I think, with that in those darker sort of scenes. Whereas Snow, the Bounty Hunter one, Snow in the
Snow in the
Desert,
Desert.
again, tried to do that, but a lot more lighter shots, and you could kind of see that the mouth syncing to the voices and things didn't quite work as well, and I much prefer the other end, like the animation. So whether it's hand drawn or computer, but very stylized animation. I think one of my favorite ones from Volume One was the last one, Zima Blue. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
very
Zima Blue,
stylized.
just very very stylish, and there's lots in that first season, which and it kind of the first season hits so many different animation styles.
Yeah,
Whereas Volume Two is sort of like there's a little bit of this, there's a little bit of this, and then there's
but it's
some of
mostly
this. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's the thing that I wanted to bring up as well was like one of the things I really liked about both of them was just the the breadth of animation style, and like just I was honestly I didn't realize like CGI has gotten to this stage in a lot of different ways. Like I actually think Snow has better facial photorealism. They did a lot more work on like some of the close-ups with like backlit. You could see like the hairs
Yes.
in the pores
Yeah.
and on the nose, which you take for granted you don't, when we think about people, we don't think you have hair on your nose because you don't really see it.
Completely.
But you do, and this is like closing that uncanny valley with detail. And it didn't feel rubbery. But you mean you already brought it up. What I was going to say is like it looks almost real until they're speaking, unless they're in the dark.
Yes.
And that's like commonly known as like one of the biggest like hoops. But that's why there's some shots. Like I really enjoyed how in Snow in the Desert, there's a lot of there's some centering shots which have maybe size but not voice, and that
Hmm.
like re-immerses you. And it's like once I've started paying attention, I thought that short was really, really well done. Also, it's the longest one. It has I think the most world building.
Yeah.
And it was just like jaw dropping, some of those shots where you're like, oh, right, that's not a person. Because they spent enough time on it, but also knew how to stage it. But again, you're right. Like, there's a lot of like light plays a big, their safety and their comfort is in the light in that show or short. And when there's danger, it's at night. Like, that's when the fights happen, etc. But that means you have these like more wholesome moments, kind of with the light necessarily being on there thematically, and that's when you see that vocal disconnect. While I think, like you said, the Michael B. Jordan one, Life Hutch, I think the thing works really well is a lot of he's not saying a lot of things. He's
Not at
making a
all.
lot of noises,
Mm.
and so those noises are easier to sync up, so it looks and feels more like Michael B. Jordan. But if he'd be like, "Ah, fucking robot," it would look real strange, right?
Yeah.
And they just chose to let him like physically act. I mean, it's obviously still just being recorded, but you know what I mean. Like act with noise rather than voice alone.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how these have been done as well, because is Life Hutch, Michael Jordan acting in a mocap suit? Is that how this was captured? Because they must have done some very detailed capturing of his face to get that into the system to be able to render and things. I remember in the first season there was one about a woman running away.
So Witness, I want to
Witness,
talk about
yes,
that one.
that
It's
one,
also
yeah.
I think maybe my favorite artistically
Mm-hmm.
and kind of thematically of series one. I think I just really liked it. But there was controversy on it. Is that what you're gonna bring up?
No, not necessarily. Rolling more within this sort of this animation style and getting to a point in Volume 2 where they're looking to do this very sort of true to life depiction of certain things, but obviously still being animation, so they can make it crazy sci-fi, and the joy of it all being animated and it not being Michael B. Jordan acting in a set with then animation around him is that it all fits very well together. The Witness has this very different kind of art style which brings it much more kind of comic book. You know, someone will put their hand on a wall and it'll go poof, and you'll see sort of like animated lines, and it will say the word as people kind of do things, or they bang down some stairs and stuff. But there are definitely scenes in that which look like people, that it's been someone filmed following them around, and then all this stuff has been added afterwards. But it's still at that point that you just can't quite tell.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how any of these, with the very kind of slightly more true to life depictions, have been filmed. So it's something I want to kind of delve into and see the process behind this, basically.
Yeah. So what I was like half convinced that the Witness must have been like mocap or paint over or something. I think part of that is the style is very much real looking people and environments, like the way the doors look in these apartments with their slightly shiny but like locks and stuff. They're like shiny but a little dulled, and the door looks pretty real, but then they've got like a large stroke to, like, when doors have the little bits that stick out or embedded, right, like to make them not plain looking like mine. Those tend to have these like look pen strokes. So it very much seems like this real door that someone's drawn on top of.
Yes.
But that's the entire thing. There's no motion capture. There's no paint over. All of it was 3D animated. And two things that stood out was the reason why they did standard keyframing, because I read an article by this, because a lot of people were like, this must, like, you're saying this is all CGI, but like that's not really CGI. It's like it's all CGI, and like with the with the running and stuff, in the same way that cartoons, to make a cartoon, or like Polygon actually has a really good video recently about animation in fighting games and how you have to like stretch and warp to make the movements look kind of exaggerated, and that comes from like cartoon animation. It's the same type of thing about keyframing, is in order to like there are literal moments where no human could be in that position, but it makes these movements and this like panic and this run look really dynamic. And their idea was to make the bodies seem pretty real, although everyone's too skitty when you think about it, all of them. But that's another bit. But then and have sort of have the movements feel more grounded, but then have like their faces be painted and like be more vibrant and a little more over the top. And
Yep.
same with the environments, right? It's this dual grounded with pen strokes on top.
Hmm.
But the reason why some of these scenes look so real is the fabrics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it turns out that the animators, so they animated everyone naked.
Right.
So rather than usually you just have a mesh that has all the bits, and this meta mesh has different physics, and that's why the sleeve drapes, right?
Mhm.
Entirely naked, and they put the clothes on, but they used a piece of software that fashion designers use to mock up things to get the right draping,
Oh,
etc.
wow.
And there's no current. They were saying when Volume One came out was like there wasn't a pipeline for this type of technology into animation,
Mm.
so they kind of like had to brute force and like do a lot of work to make
Yeah.
like a really janky pipeline to get these. But that's why like when you see her put her red robe on when she's like running away, and it's like slinking and it's draping and it's flowing as she's running, it's because it's using an entirely non-standard animation technique,
Amazing.
which is based on how to design clothes, and obviously draping and fabric and it's what it's made of is really important. And so this piece of software they found and they figured out how to do, and that's a large reason why it tricks you, because it's just the fabric looks like the right type of fabric and moves like the right type of fabric. It like reflects like the right type of fabric.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so which I thought was really really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
and,
much.
and yeah, even if you aren't super into watching all of series one, I do think that one and Zima Blue for a different reason. I think aesthetically, if you want to see animation do some crazy stuff that seems too real, then The Witness is a really great one.
Mhm.
And then like you said, I really enjoyed the actual narrative arc of Zima Blue, as well as
Yes.
the more like Powerpuff Girls type of standard animation.
Mm.
Did you have any shenanigans from Volume One before we loop back into?
I think it opened quite well with three robots. As a picking all of the running through all of the episodes, I think three robots kind of some stuff sort of happens. You get the tone of kind of what the series is going to be from that, and it's quite concise. It's just very well a little story, very well told. Enough world building in there to keep you interested in what's going on, and enough kind of like mise en scene and stuff for you to be like, oh yeah, this is this is Earth, and they're taking a tour kind of around it, or it's in Earth City as such, like a human city, and they're taking a tour around it kind of thing, and you pick up sort of various parts of kind of where they're walking through. Like, oh yeah, I get to see, I understand sort of what they're doing. I just thought it was a very well made little sort of short. Not the most interesting in terms of its animation, but really good opener. So I think if you haven't seen this, that would be the first one to watch. The first one, Three Robots of Volume 1, because it just showcases quite well what to expect. Some of them, the episodes in Volume 1, go absolutely nuts, and kind of as you would expect. Some of them are completely, they're just kind of action things with a little bit of sort of exposition in them. There's some which are kind of big monsters and stuff. There's one with soldiers who are werewolves as well, which was quite good. But I think there's the, let me have a look, hang on, I got volume 2 up. Volume 1, oh, that's it, When the Yogurt Took Over.
Oh, that's such a good one.
It's just really good. And
I think that's sort of the thing that I feel like is missing from Volume 2 is there's just not really, like, except for All Through the House, which I fucking loved, and I want to take a moment to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
But like, except for that one, which is like one of the shortest, they're all very much more in line. There isn't as much batshit thematically. We've got the sort of Lovecraftian, the tall grass sort of thing, but outside of that, it's just a lot of sci-fi.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the yogurt one is very silly, but also it's not done just to be silly, and so it works.
Yes. Completely. And automated customer service has a feel about that as well, definitely
Yeah.
from Volume 2. It's interesting. There was something else I was kind of Pop Squad in Volume 2 as well. Having recently watched, and we've had Altered Carbon on Netflix, a couple of seasons of that, and having read those books and knowing kind of the idea of society, what happens to it when people have found that essence of being able to live a much longer lifetime, that kind of Pop Squad kind of explores that, but you could sort of see various other influences sort of coming into that episode. And I think automated customer service definitely watched Volume 1, or the people who made it must have watched Volume 1 and enjoyed the yoga episode and gone, really like that tone. I'd like to do something not similar, but something which echoes that a little bit. So it's.
Do you remember what it was called? Oh yeah, it was by Blow Studio. Sorry. So I'm also shocked that it wasn't by the same studio, because it has, like you said, similar vibes. But I mean, one thing I really enjoyed was the opening with automated customer service, which is basically a short of someone's vacuum goes crazy, and the automated help service is basically like, you're kind of boned. I guess you could try doing this, but mostly like, sorry, your vacuum owns your house now and stuff. Like, and it's very silly, but also the animation is so weird. Their heads are giant. It's mostly like an old people retirement home, and so they're like cartoon crenellated with these big heads and small limbs. And it starts with a weird masturbation joke of the neighbor polishing his gun, but she just sees his hand moving back and forth while watching her yoga. And there's like a call, and like the gun and the yoga like are integral to later in the short. Like, it's just really well made, but it's very silly. But you actually feel her fear and panic. Like, it's well paced and directed, and yet dumb, like in that way.
I think to give a bit of a difference between Volume 1 and Volume 2, or something that I actually think is improved upon in Volume 2, is I think the stories feel a little bit more mature than they kind of did in Volume 1. A lot of Volume 1 is like smash, bang, crash, finished. Whereas a lot of these, whilst some of them are much smaller, like something like Pop Squad. I think Pop Squad's really good, and Snow in the Desert as well, in doing some big exposition kind of stuff. Like, it gets you really invested in kind of the world that's happening, and some of that comes through dialogue, some of that comes through sort of the setting and what's happening. And there's a shot of in Pop Squad, I think, where he's in the car, and the detective, it's all about a detective who has to kill children, basically, unregistered kind of children because of an aging
unauthorized offspring.
And something in him must sort of twist, and he's got kind of like, he holds the gun up to a couple of kids in the first episode, and you know that he's there to kill them. Sorry, not in the first episode, in the first scene. And obviously he's having kind of this this dilemma in him, and you can see that from like the way that they suggest kind of society is now just a bit more carefree. People can kind of do what they want and stuff through the conversations he has with his partner. When the partner gets in the car, his like lover, not detective partner, when his like lover gets in the car after she's had her injection to keep her alive that little bit longer, she tries to get on him, and she's like, it always gets me going after this, and he is just like, nah. And you feel that this is something that he would have jumped at the chance to do, and it's just that change in his motivations and how he sees the world and everything is depicted very, very well within that short little scene in that car. And I think a lot of these episodes have very short scenes which actually tell you quite a lot, rather than it just being 3 or 4 minutes of just kind of carnage. And we get a lot less of that within this season, and a little bit more focus on the storytelling, I think.
It's interesting, because actually one of the things I wrote down was, and I think this is again just because there's 8 versus 18 episodes, but I was like, wow, basically all 8 episodes are violence oriented.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. The storytelling is tighter, and there's scenes that are going on, but like it's all something attacks something,
Yeah,
someone,
yeah.
right? Like, and that didn't feel the same. Like even alternate histories has a bunch of violence, but like the point was, we have a machine that can show you counterfactuals, and it turns out what people really want to know is shit about Hitler, which makes sense. And then it's yes, he dies in different ways because that's what the questions are, but it doesn't feel like it's a violence oriented thing. And I felt like that was a bit of a letdown in this because, like you said, the storytelling is tighter. It's like, well, then you could just not have things attack.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
could play in that space a little more. Like I feel like it's love, death, and robots, and I feel like death is in almost all of them, but love
Yes.
isn't necessarily, and robots aren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. And that's like I feel like a sad way to roll through. Versus, feel like what I liked really a lot about Volume One was that there were some love only episodes, or some death only episodes, some robots only episodes, but some that had a combination. But this mix feels much more like death and probably technology, except for like one or two outliers.
Sure. Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is
completely.
why, yeah, which is why I really liked Ice,
Mm.
because it was love. It was like familial brotherly love was the whole point of it, right? It was
Yep.
this very stylized animation, kind of similar to like looks hand drawn, but was probably like hand drawn CGI as well, like in the way that most TV shows are now, because no one can afford to pay people to draw every cell. But like yeah, so like thick lines, things look 2D, but they have movement.
It reminded me much more of you know, there's always going to be kind of this Animatrix callback, but
I mean,
Ice
yeah,
definitely felt more like that. You know, it wasn't again, it wasn't just sort of like here's an art style, here's an art style, here's an art style, here's an art style, here's an art style. It was like no, this is kind of it's been placed very well behind this very kind of computer generated but lifelike but still very weird kind of not quite kids animation of the first automated cleaning whatever it's called, the first
customer
one,
service.
automated customer service. Then Ice hits you like wow, yeah, great, amazing. I love the animation sort of style in that, but it felt more anime than kind of any of
Yeah,
the other ones. And absolutely, as soon as I was watching that, I'm like, this feels like the Animatrix. This is where the first season was kind of saying like, oh, it's like the Animatrix. We're getting lots of little short stories, all in
yeah,
animated different styles. This actually felt like it. And then you move into Pop Squad, which gets a bit more lifelike, but it still pulls away from that. And then Snow in the Desert, which is just like, nope, here is all of the
yeah.
powerful
People,
technology to try and do
yeah,
as much as we can. But yeah, Ice was really good, and as you say, very different in the kind of the love aspect of it. Automated cleaning service didn't have so much kind of the love aspect of it, apart from maybe between the woman and her dog,
yeah,
and possibly you know you could read into it about the lifestyle that they enjoy. They love everything kind of being done for them. And I think part of that is reflected in that animation. Big heads, smaller bodies. These people obviously don't have to do very much. They just kind of
yeah.
exist, and everything is done kind of for them.
I mean, and that's like the central the inciting incident of automated customer service is so well chosen because it's the lady comes, her house is spick and span, this thing is vacuuming, it's doing her thing, and then she's like, there's a picture of her and her dog, and she's just like, I'm gonna uncenter it, and then the vacuum goes with its like an arm comes out of nowhere and then moves it back to
Yeah.
center it, and then they have this tug of war thing, and that's when it decides that no, she's bad because she's not, she's like wrecking the place essentially,
Hmm.
and what she's doing is moving a photo of her own in her own house, right? But it's such a smart inciting incident because it's that pull of like, well, when if everything's done for you and you don't like it, tough, kind of like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the vibe, right? And it's like, well, what do you do? And then like mild spoiler alert, like the decision at the end of that is to say fuck off, fuck it, like we're just gonna go on the lam rather than be governed by these robots
Hmm.
and governed in the sense of like stuck in their routines,
Yes.
which I
Very
really
much.
really liked.
Yeah.
Um,
And
it,
I think as well, trying to call back to your point about a lot of these felt a bit more violent. You know, they were all centered around death and violence more than sort of the other kind of elements. And robots, I think, is the not the weakest, but the least done in this season. It's a lot more to do with kind of like humans and ice. Some of them are enhanced, but they're not. You don't know whether it's kind of like genetic, whether it's implants or whether it's just natural enhancements for some kind of reason. I don't think it delves into that.
It just says that for some reason that one kid, Seb, was it?
Oh, I don't know.
Sedgwick? Said some S something. There was one of the brothers doesn't have anything, and all we know is that he doesn't have anything, and that's weird.
Yes.
And the other thing we know is that they are from Earth, and so this colony they're on basically shuns outsiders, and so he's called Extro throughout.
Yes.
So like a slur by people, as in presumably like extraneous, external. And so he has to deal with like not fitting in two different ways, and his brother has figured out how to fit in because of being able to do the things the other kids can do.
Yep.
But again, look, what I really liked about that is there's very Gattaca vibes to their relationship. Reminded me of like the swimming. Do you remember Gattaca?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So like the first main scene you see them is they're swimming and somehow, and he always quits before because he's the genetically inferior. Like the whole point of that world is they test people and they know this is the broken child. And then one day when they're older, they're adults, they swim, and the young bad child, in the sense of genetically inferior child, wins the swimming and has to takes his brother. His brother can't swim anymore because he refused. Like they were both being stubborn, and he swims him back. And then later on in the movie, it's like, well, how did you do that? And he said, well, I didn't save any energy on the way back. And that's kind of the vibes you get, which is it's more adrenaline based because they're like running away, but his like brother is briefly hurt and can't run, and he just like picks him up and finds the reserves despite not having powers, and it's bad, and they both get launched in the air. Like I like that he still couldn't make the pace; they just kind of lucked out.
Yeah.
But the point is, he was like, "Nah, I got you, brother," and everyone saw that, and like he got accepted in the group because he did the run, but also I'm sure they noticed that like he did this insane thing and he doesn't have powers, and that's like the vibe you got was like, and now he's in with these kids of his own age, and so it's different from Gattaca that way. But I felt like that central brotherly competition showing up was just very Gattaca, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah,
nice. And I mean, we're kind of running through each of the episodes as we come up with points, but the other two which didn't quite have that violence, but also robots, but also not really love either, but kind of. And I really liked All Through the House.
Yeah.
But it kind of fits, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the title of Love, Death, Robots. And The Drowned Giant as well. It is a bit in there. But again, just feels a little bit kind of removed from the sort of the central theme of this. And I like that. I like that they're kind of... It's not all necessarily having to be kind of all of this, that they're finding a place to be able to sort of put these things in. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get another 8 episodes, in 6 months' time or something like that, rather than waiting the amount of time between sort of season 1 and season 2, right, that again explores a little bit more, that takes kind of Love, Death and Robots and is able to kind of go, well, like The Drowned Giant is centered much more around death, and how that impacts or how that makes someone else kind of feel when it's the death of something very, very different. Yeah, exactly. And All Through the House kind of doesn't fit at all, but it's fantastic.
So on those two, like, I think, they're bright lights because they aren't doing, again, they're not centering on death in the same, they're not centering on violence, and that's what I meant about you can do. So The Drowned Giant is death without violence. I mean, except for like just desecration of a giant's body and stuff, but like it's not, that's a different type of violence, right? It's not shooty, punchy, and that's what I liked about it. And like the Christmas one, what was it called? All Through the House?
All Through the House,
is amazing. It's hilarious. It's silly. It has very Christmas stop motion animation vibes. Like the the drool of the alien monster thing is like goopy, and it looks like it's like put like literal like goop and then filmed it and moved it along like in stop motion. It feels really like it's a testament to how good liquid physics can be to make them look that janky, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean the premise is great. I called it as soon as I saw it, and it didn't matter. It was just like, oh god, like, oh, it's Santa. No, it's this weird alien thing. I'm like, that's Santa.
Yeah.
And
I thought it was going to be pull more into the theme. I did think it was going to be some kind of robotic Santa, and that was going to be sort of the pull of it. So I was nicely surprised when the tongue flicks out from behind the tree to slurp the milk and take the cookies type thing. But yeah, it was fantastic. As soon as the first panning shot sort of towards the house, and I'm like, oh, it's a Christmas one, because I didn't know any of the titles. I just let it kind of play through, and I'm like, brilliant. I love it when you get like, you have a show and then they're just like, random Christmas episode, and it's just like, brilliant. Okay, so when this one kicked in, I'm like, that's good. That's a very good twist on kind of this anthology sort of take on stuff. And then when it was that stop motion, like so many kind of modern kids kind of Christmassy style things, you see not even Christmas ones, but stuff that seems to come out at kind of Christmas, whether it's the Gruffalo or Zog. I can't remember the author who writes those. I mean, obviously we read that a lot and watch those kinds of things a lot at the moment, but those ones are all animated in a very sort of similar kind of style. You have the more claymation kind of things, which we do get with, which one was the claymation? I mean, like the Tall Grass had a little bit of that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one, it absolutely felt, and it set you straight away like, brilliant. It's a Christmas one.
Yeah.
It's very similar to kind of what we get actually at Christmas for various different kinds of episodes and things. And that little twist was just like, brilliant. It's very, very well, and it's maybe, is that the shortest one?
It is. It's 7 minutes.
Yeah, but super concise, and I'm really happy that the other I'm glad that they kind of subverted as well, that at the end when the alien is sniffing the kids, that they didn't do what the expectation was, that he gets to the second kid and stuff. So I like that they pulled away from that kind of thing, and changed it. It was like, cool, it's done, amazing.
Yeah, and like, so that's like proof that they don't all need to be long, because it's very tight, but it's also very simple.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not dealing with, I think really it's love, death, and technology, I think is clearly what the series wants to be, rather than robots.
Yeah.
But even there, we're like, it's not really love, it's not really death, except fear. But it's good, so you can get it a pass. I'm okay with that.
It's the love of kids at Christmas wanting to see who Santa was, so they explore this unknown element. And, a lot of the times when kids are kind of in the dark by themselves and they hear a bang, their brain normally turns it more to being something that they don't want to think. At Christmas, when you sort of have this expectation that, oh, Santa is a thing, that the kids are like, yay, we heard this bang downstairs, it must be Santa. He's escaped forever.
So I think I really liked it, but I think also because it was, I mean, there was like a worry of violence, but like I said before, it just didn't have a lot of violence. But I think that's why I think that actually made the rest of the mismatch in themes very more stark. Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Going to the drowned giant that you sort of mentioned before, as like, and like agreed, it's sort of a different beast, literally and figuratively. I wanted to like it, I just didn't. I saw the themes. and it's really silly, but it's like they open with him saying he's a scientist, and then he just waxes lyrical like an English professor.
Yeah,
Um,
completely.
and it's like this is where like I like the melancholic like meditations on death, and like he's clearly seeing his own mortality in this amazing thing, and seeing how people don't care. But like so much of it felt like it's too grounded in reality to like in his presentation for me to ignore things that don't make sense.
Hmm.
For example, there's no way there wouldn't have been cops or people cordoning things
I
off.
mean, is
Um,
this yeah, that was part of what I thought. Like a lot of the time, we get a lot of little bits of exposition through kind of the stories being told. With this, it felt like it was a big sort of thing that no one had kind of ever seen before. But then it was like, yeah, no one's going to worry about it. We're scientists, but we're not going to take samples. We just climb on top of it and
no,
walk around it and
yeah, I'm
stuff.
pretty
And I
sure they
mean,
said they were scientists, but they sort of were dressed as generic academics. And then he's
more
just like
professor. Yes, yeah.
generic, yeah. And then he's waxing lyrical. But then there's like a line that stuck out with me, which is like my colleagues saw that I was interested in this thing, so they, basically I got the role of observer.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like 3 days later, I went back and like what? And
Yeah.
then his next thing is I didn't see it for another 3 weeks, and you're like, I thought you were responsible for observing this, and I've seen you do no science. And if you are like a bunch of humanists, you would still have to observe it. Like if these are like if it wasn't scientists and it was like the sociology, anthropology, or whatever, there's
Mhm.
still a reason for them to visit. Like I don't mind if those are the types of academics. So I'm
Yep.
pretty sure they said scientists. But then again, they didn't do anything about it, and also like they all arrived and everyone's just staring at the thing until these three randos who don't say anything to anyone, they just push to the front and then
Yeah.
walk towards it, and everyone's like, wait, we can walk towards it. And it felt this like I think maybe it's because it's going again pretty photorealistic, it's
Mm.
feeling very grounded. And then it's like I think if the art style was a little more whimsical, you could forgive these like disconnects, but it felt really weird to me. And like, I'm sorry, I pay attention to the news. I've seen footage of a beached whale. People don't climb on top of it and make sandcastles.
Yep.
Like again, I see what they're like metaphorically trying to do is like they don't care, it's a novelty, so they climb on it. And like I really liked the visual of the added footprints
Mm.
as people stood on it, but it was just like even if it wasn't humanoid, like people don't do that.
Yeah.
Like and then so it didn't work in a lot of ways, and I could see the thing. And like I said, I really liked that it was kind of a meditation on death. Like it was taking the theme seriously in a way that none of the other
Mm-hmm.
18+7 episodes of this entire series really do. It just didn't work for me. And
Yeah,
so I'm in
I
this
agree.
awkward position of being like, I want more things like this, except that one. I didn't like that one.
You want more things that take a stance like that, and they very much check that box and take it very seriously, rather than it just being, death is a kind of a fear
Death via
via
violence,
violence.
or
So yeah.
yeah, like death and robots together, it feels like is most of this series, right? It's just robots threatening your life in some way, or technology affecting life.
Mhm.
So we have the immortality and the trade-off of the Pop Squad, which I really liked because it was technology, not robots, really, but it was this meditation on, yeah, like you said, you've seen this in other places, but like, okay, how would a civilization survive if no one died? Well, you'd have to not let new people happen.
Yep.
Like and they'd say that in the throwaway line, and I think the world building was really, really well done,
Mm.
given that's so short. But yeah, it was still in the end like a shootout,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was like,
I think
like even if it was the threat of the gun, and then she like they fight over the gun, she like kicks him in the junk and grabs her baby, gets on her scooter, and she's like riding away, and he's got his gun pointed at her, and he chooses to miss or not fire. That to me would have been like more poetic than him shooting his partner in
Yeah,
a standoff,
very
and
much.
it
Or if it
wouldn't.
had just cut, like if it had just been him holding the gun at the end and it had just cut, that would have been, a lot of this. And I like a lot of the shortness of this is that it leaves a lot to the imagination.
Yeah,
With Ice, you're like, well, these two brothers don't connect that, or kind of they have this connection, but they obviously don't hang out very much. The younger brother who's enhanced is asked to, by his mum to be like to look out for the older brother and stuff, and there's a little bit of an issue kind of between them and stuff. And then from this event that kind of happens, you get that love aspect between them, and very much on whether the brother was faking it and all of that sort of stuff to help his brother actually to kind of overcome this and stuff is really good in sort of how it doesn't quite tell you but plays on it a little bit, but then it allows you by stopping there and it not being kind of an extra 5 minutes and then exploring kind of any further, it allows you to kind of make that in your mind, so everyone will take something slightly different kind of away from this. And I think the issue with Pop Squad, with them killing each other at the end, it's a very definitive finish. You're like, well, okay.
Except now you're like, what, does she now gonna have, like, she has 2 dead Pop Squads
Yes,
on her
so
doorstep?
that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, and it was like, I mean, I don't know why you chose to do this, but that woman's fucked.
Yep. Unless she's got a shovel and she can get rid of you and hide your cars and stuff very, very swiftly, then yes, you've fucked it. Trying to protect her, but doing it very, very poorly.
Which I liked, right? I liked that. So there is some give and take on that more definitive ending, but that was more like, oh, this hasn't solved the thing, and that's like nice to like have that not a bow, but also it still felt like you didn't need to hit us over the head with he's sacrificing his way of life to save yours by literally sacrificing his life.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. One thing I did want to point out, I don't know if you caught this, but do you remember the name of this? So one thing in Pop Squad, I really liked the idea of the antique store being a front for toys. And Ipswich Collectibles and Antiques.
Oh, in the Drowned Giant.
No, in both.
Oh, was it? Oh, that was
store.
cool. Oh, really?
Yeah, because I wrote down, because I just wrote down Ipswich like black market, and then in my notes, and then Drowned Giant. I'm like, wait, and it even got the same frontage and like font, but it's like clearly a couple centuries before, etc. Right? Because this is like modern times,
Well,
presumably.
yes, but also Pop Squad. I mean, they're not all kind of American accents, but very much fronted by Nolan North voicing the character. Yeah. Lots of sort of more what you would expect, and even the cars had that more kind of 50s American kind of vibe, and from the Art Deco architecture and stuff of the buildings. Whereas, and actually, I mean, there's I'm sure there's somewhere in America, in the United States of America, called Ipswich, if not several places. But in the Drowned Giant, there were a couple of moments with the way that people were dressed that is set in England, and very much from the architecture, from the landscape of the seaside, from the narrator, the way that he's talking, from the way that they're kind of dressed and stuff. There's a couple of people that pop down to the beach and start sort of jumping on top of the thing. I'm like, British people don't dress like that. That's an American seaside, not even seaside. That's an American coastal person that lives in California and like has much better weather than we do, or at least that Ipswich does as well. And it's interesting though that they've kept that there is that thread, or at least the same name, kind of running through. So it'd be interesting to see how how they've collaborated, or whether it was kind of where that's come from, really.
Yeah, so Tim Miller is the series lead, basically. And he works for Blur Studio.
Right.
That's his studio. And I'm going to hit you with some facts, which is in Series 1, Blur Studio did 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
How many do you think they did in volume 2?
Ooh, ooh. It's either going to be more or it's going to be none. I'm going to go with none. I'm wrong, but I'm going to go with none.
It's 3.
Oh, okay.
But I think that says a lot with what we're talking about the thematics and everything being more samey. Because even if you're trying to do different things, it's still the same studio, the same
Yep.
sort of artistic visions. Now, which do you think the 3 are?
I mean, if we're going along this thread, and this is what I'd say the Drowned Giant, I'd say Pop Squad, and then I'd probably say the Tall Grass because it's a shorter one, and it's a different sort of art style, but similar enough to kind of Pop Squad and the Drowned Giant that they've just changed things a bit, but maybe not. I'll go for the Tall
No,
Grass.
you're giving too much credit. It's Life Hutch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, all 3 are very photorealism thing, right?
Mhm.
So when you look at those 3 plus even just adding snow in the desert, half of them are this same very similar photorealistic. Obviously there's like it's more washed out in the Drowned Giant because it's England, but also
Yep.
like people seem to have outside the giant, they have sort of more less distinct features. You see less close-ups with like strong pores and stuff compared to what you see Michael B. Jordan in Life Hutch,
Yeah, definitely.
right? But yeah, while Pop Squad kind of feels the same as the Michael B. Jordan, just a lot more people, same facial detail.
Yeah, it does. But they aren't quite as sort of, and I don't know whether that's a commentary on sort of the society and people living longer, but they are not quite as sort of the main character, the detective, very sort of long, like very tall, very slender, sort of feels a little bit more exaggerated of a kind of a character. The same with his partner, sort of when she's
Especially when she's
singing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's the thing is like the type of CGI is kind of clearly the same, but the way they're wrapping it is different, which I appreciate. Right? It's not just like reskin, etc. Like you said, the body shapes are different. The detail, like except for seeing his like age spots on his hand in Pop Squad, when he's like thinking about what
Yeah,
it is to
yeah.
live forever, they're a lot. They're all super youthful, exaggerated. Like he's got broad shoulders and thin, but not over the top. He's, while Michael B. Jordan just looks like a soldier. It's hard to tell he's got armor on,
Yeah.
right? And then the Giant has maybe roughly of all the same builds,
Yeah, pretty much.
but yeah. So I thought that was interesting. The Tall Grass is one is like super Lovecraftian, and like you said, it's a really neat art style because it feels hand drawn, and part of that is like because the facial textures and stuff are like almost tessellated. Like there's bits and bobs of different colors, and so even when they rotate, it reflects slightly differently, and it just feels like someone has drawn and like done shading. And like the first time you see it, you're like, "Is this stop motiony?" And you're like, "Oh no, this is something else." But even the way he walks through hallways, it's all very static lights and stuff. It's clearly trying to evoke until you see the weird things, which are much more dynamic, much more like they feel more skeletal. They feel like they could come from one of these other shorts. They don't have the same art style, and they glow. And so
Yes.
I think that the like flatter people on the train in the tall grass, and then even the grass is kind of like it feels like the parting of it is almost like is someone drawing it being parted rather than physical shapes being moved. And then seeing these things which move quite quickly, which are detailed and glowing, and you're like, oh, these things are otherworldly because what you've done is you've presented me this very flat sort of artistic hand-drawn styled world, and then these things that just aren't there. Like they
Yeah, very
shouldn't
much.
be there, but they're not too out of place. I think that's what I really liked about that one, as a 10-minute short that doesn't do a lot except scare you.
Yeah, I'd agree. That it is a very good sort of art style, and I think that's kind of all it does, really. It kind of it does evoke a little bit of sort of like a horror element to it, but I didn't feel anything really from it.
I could a couple times in when he's fighting with the things, I was like, oh, maybe he'll get torn apart. Oh, he didn't. And
Yeah.
like I didn't care whether or not he survived. I
Yeah,
was just like,
completely.
I am watching
Absolutely.
this thing, and I
Yep.
will accept what happens to this character either way. It could end in total violence or salvation. And one, that's an interesting thing to like write a story that keeps you guessing, which is good. But also when I don't care, less good.
Yes, very much. Very. And I think they missed the trick with not making the train conductor look a little bit more like Sam Neill and just saying stay out of the long grass or something, you know.
Yeah, nice. um, yeah. So what was your favorite? Out of curiosity.
I think I, for different reasons, I think three sit up a little bit for me. And it's Ice, Pop Squad, and All Through the House. Um, All Through the House as just a very removed but very good short. Something very concise. It has this lovely
Yeah.
little sort of through line and thread, and is done very well and animated very well. Ice, I loved the animation. I liked the relationship between the characters, and that they're kids and they just go out and do this fucking stupid thing as kids do. Very
Yeah.
relatable. I really, really good. And some of those scenes where a lot of it is very kind of washed out blues and greys and stuff, and then suddenly those like flares kick in and stuff, and it's just a massive contrast of that color across this very ice sort of landscape. So I really like the animation with that. And I think Pop Squad for me, I liked the story, I liked the exposition and the world building within that, and how much they could convey in a very short space of time. So I think those three are my favorites from this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically on board with All Through the House is kind of just its own thing. If I saw it just as a short on YouTube, I'd be like sharing it, like
Yeah,
sending it
absolutely.
to people,
Yeah.
right? Like it doesn't really fit the theme, but it doesn't need to. It's just solid, and it's short and it's cute. Fucking great punchy final line. Um, I think Ice is also why like of the on theme one. I moved talked at length
Hmm.
on why. I basically the same reasons you. I thought so watching it, I really enjoyed Snow in the Desert.
Hmm.
Part of it was just it was beautiful. The world building in the first couple minutes was astonishingly good.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then I realized that when I was thinking about it afterwards, I'm like, I kind of just petered out. Like I see what
Yep.
they're trying to
Yeah.
do with the two protagonists and their link, but it felt kind of unearned. I don't know if that's fair. I like the idea of how it ended, given these things, but it brought up more questions. Like, oh, if she's been alive as a synthetic cyborg essentially that was saved, and you get the idea maybe she wasn't in this body, maybe it's been fixed or added to. You can kind of infer that, but then you're like, surely there'd be others.
Hmm.
If she's been around for hundreds of years, there's others around. He wouldn't be shocked. He was shocked that she existed as a concept, right? He's like, "Oh, you're in synthetic," and she's like, "No, I'm all these things," and it felt like a revelation. And again, that's like weird writing, and it felt like it was just like, if she was a robot and she's like, "Well, I'm not gonna die. We just need to repair me," I would have liked it more because I wouldn't have had questions.
And I think it tries to sort of tell this story of loneliness as well. I think that's kind of
Yeah,
the central theme behind Snow in the Dark. It's a story about kind of loneliness, and how this guy has isolated himself. One, because he can regenerate and needs to kind of stay away and wants to stay away, otherwise people are going to come for him. But also because he lived with his wife, he outlived his wife. She aged, he didn't. And I think it's about loneliness. And I don't think, again, the characters coupling up, it wasn't earned. That it's yes, it is one of the longer episodes, but I don't think it was long enough to explore that theme, and it kind of very quickly got away from that to then go into a more action heavy finish. And I think
well,
it didn't quite have
yeah,
that kind of payoff to it.
yeah. So when they hooked up, I was like, yeah, that makes sense because he's alone, and like I mean, lockdown has taught me a lot about missing physical
Yeah.
contact, etc. Right? So I bought that immediately. I don't know what her story is, but if she wants to like hook up with him, like all the power to them. It's after the fight, which I understand all the bits. I like that. But then her just being like, "Oh yes, I have also been alive a long time," and then them having this like loving thing. I feel like if it felt less final, like it really felt
Yeah.
like, and then they lived happily ever after. But if it was like something more ambiguous, or like you said, a little more time showing that there was more to them than people who spent a couple days going through the desert. Um, yeah, so I liked it a lot. I just felt let down by the ending, which is kind of how I felt in general about Love, Death, and Robots Series 2. I liked some parts of it, but it just felt sort of underdeveloped in some parts, or just leaning too heavily on very standard themes. Why I brought the one studio doing 3 of the 8 versus 3 of the 18, I think highlights that, like, when you have one studio doing all of them, even though they were very different things, right? There's still like a vibe that makes it more samey. And one of the things I really liked about Volume 1 was that it felt like a kind of crazy collection anthology of drawing from all kinds of places.
Yes,
and this felt very much like well, there's this well, and we're gonna keep drawing from it. And every so often we're gonna buy a bottle of water. So don't worry, not all the water is gonna be from this well, but like most of it.
Yeah.
And it's just, it didn't. If I hadn't seen Series 1, I think I would have been way more like up on Series 2.
Okay.
Because like my complaints are like, but I know you could have done better. Like,
rather than rolling through all of it. Yeah, I've got that period of time after season 1 where I was excited to come back into season 2. And you're like, yeah, okay, cool. I see what they're doing. Done. Fine. I'll take that. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll take that. Sure. And you kind of you accept a little bit more. Whereas with you having then watched this, what was that until 18 and 8? Is it 18 and 8? So yeah, you very much watch it all in one go and go, no, I can see the problems that kind of come up from this. Cool.
I mean, then also, like, last point is just like, this is one of my problems with getting all the episodes together. One of the things that I really liked about when we watched WandaVision was I'm sure if I binged WandaVision, I would have noticed some sort of things that were like niggling in the back of my head in one episode, and it's still there in the next episode. But because I'm watching them week by week, you just don't notice. Like, there is something to be said about taking a break.
Very much.
And I think, so I almost would have rather just like a slow dole out of these shorts.
You maybe got 3 episodes a week or something like that, just to see you over. And they go, well, it's that's 30 minutes to 40 minutes of time for you to sort of watch something, and then we'll hit you again with sort of another 3. Yeah, and I do think that we'll probably see a season 3 sooner rather than later, with maybe another 8, maybe 6 episodes or something, just something slightly different to kind of keep us going. So I think this is successful enough in what it's trying to do to warrant more of this. So just before we finish, thank you, Shiny Foreskin, for the follow. I like the name. There's no E, so I'm thinking it's more wholesome. Shiny Foreskin. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Yes, thanks for the follow. Speaking of which, if you enjoyed this show, like, follow, subscribe on your platform of choice. If you are listening to us as a podcast, which we are, please also rate, review on said podcasting platform, and share it. That's how we get a bigger audience. That's how we can make more eps and have more conversation. Speaking of conversation, you can contact us at OutOfLivesNet on Twitter, or email us at podcast@outoflives.net if you have thoughts and feelings on how we are totally wrong about the drowned giant. You can also reach Ben directly at Nova_47 and myself at the Omniarch, and also take a look at outoflives.net, where we have articles, videos, podcasts, all about pop culture, geeky, nerdy, gamey stuff. I think that's everything.
Yep.
So for another week, I've been Adil.
I've been Ben.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take it easy.
www.outoflives.net